The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty plains of eastern Arizona as Jack Holden rode along the boundary of the San Carlos Apache Reservation. The year was 1885, and tensions between settlers and the Apache had eased somewhat since the end of the recent conflicts, but suspicion still ran deep on both sides. At 32, Jack had spent most of his adult life working cattle in the territory, his weathered face and calloused hands testament to years under the harsh desert sun. "Easy, Rusty," Jack murmured as his chestnut quarter horse sidestepped nervously. The air smelled different, acrid with smoke that shouldn't be there. Jack squinted toward the horizon, where a thin gray plume rose against the amber sky. Fire in these parts could spell disaster for everyone, reservation and ranchers alike. "Damn it all," he muttered, spurring Rusty forward. The fire was small enough that it might still be contained, and it appeared to be coming from just inside the reservation boundary. Jack knew crossing that invisible line uninvited could be seen as trespassing, but a wildfire wouldn't respect such boundaries either. As he approached, the scene became clearer. A small wooden structure was ablaze, flames licking hungrily at the dry timber walls. Two figures lay motionless on the ground outside, a man and a woman, both Apache. Jack dismounted quickly, checking for signs of life, but finding none. Arrow wounds in their backs told a grim story. Not an accident, but an attack. A faint cry rose above the crackling flames. Jack froze, straining to hear. There it was again, unmistakably the wail of an infant coming from inside the burning structure. Without hesitation, Jack pulled his bandana over his nose and mouth and plunged through the doorway. The heat was immediate and suffocating, the smoke blinding. He dropped to his knees, crawling beneath the worst of the smoke. The cries led him to a small bundle wrapped in a woven blanket, tucked beneath what appeared to be a low-sleeping platform. Jack scooped up the child and retreated the way he had come, lungs burning, eyes streaming. He burst back into the open air, gulping down clean breaths as he moved away from the collapsing structure. The infant in his arms, no more than a few months old, coughed weakly but was alive. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made Jack turn sharply. 5 Apache men on horseback crested the nearby hill, weapons ready. Jack recognized the distinct headband of a tribal leader on the foremost rider, Nandi, whose name he'd heard spoken with respect even among the white settlers. "I didn't do this," Jack called out, staying perfectly still as they approached. "I found them already fallen." The child was inside. He gently held the infant where they could see it. The Apache riders circled him, faces impassive but eyes taking in everything. The dead couple, the burning dwelling, the white man holding one of their children. Nandi dismounted, his weathered face revealing nothing as he examined the scene. "Renegade Chiricahua," he finally said, indicating the distinctive arrow markings. "Not your doing." His English was clear and deliberate. He looked at Jack with penetrating intensity. "You entered fire for the child." Jack nodded, still cradling the infant who had quieted against his chest. "I heard crying. Couldn't just ride away." Nandi studied him for a long moment, then spoke in Apache to his companions. One of them, an older woman who had ridden up moments after, dismounted and approached Jack, arms outstretched for the child. Jack carefully transferred the bundle to her. "The child's parents were Talsi and Nita," Nandi explained. "Good people. Their spirits will find peace knowing their son lives." "What will happen to him?" Jack asked, watching as the woman checked the infant for injuries. "He is Apache. He belongs with his people," Nandi replied simply. Then, with a slight nod toward Jack, he added, "You have courage, Cowboy. Few white men would risk themselves for an Apache child." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack mounted Rusty, preparing to ride back to his ranch. The decision that would change his life forever was still forming in his mind as he took one last look at the child he had pulled from the flames, unaware that their paths would soon cross again in ways neither could imagine. 10 years passed like a slow-moving river, carving new channels in the landscape of the Arizona Territory. Jack Holden's Crooked Creek Ranch had prospered despite drought and the occasional cattle rustler. He'd built a modest 2-story house to replace the original cabin, added a barn and corral that could hold 50 horses, and employed a handful of cowhands year-round. Yet for all his success, Jack remained a solitary figure. The memories of that burning dwelling and the Apache infant he'd rescued occasionally drifted into his thoughts, especially on quiet nights when the coyotes howled in the distance. The summer of 1895 brought record heat that baked the earth to a crisp brown. Jack and two of his hands, Miguel and Caleb, were mending fences along the eastern property line when they spotted dust on the horizon. "Riders coming," Caleb said, shading his eyes. "4 of them. Apache by the look of it." Jack nodded, recognizing the straight-back posture of Nandi leading the small group. Beside him rode a boy of about 10, his bearing remarkably similar to the elders. 2 warriors followed at a respectful distance. "Holden," Nandi greeted as they approached. "Many seasons have passed." "Nandi," Jack returned with a nod. "What brings you to Crooked Creek?" The Apache leader gestured to the boy beside him. "This is Talsey's son, the one you carried from fire." Jack's eyes widened slightly as he studied the boy's face. The child sat his pony with natural ease, his dark eyes meeting Jack's without fear or hesitation. He wore traditional Apache clothing, but there was something in his expression, a curiosity, perhaps, that reminded Jack of himself at that age. "His name is Nida," Nandi continued. "He knows the story of his birth and your part in it. He has asked to meet the man our people call Kainaki's man with 2 lives. Jack raised an eyebrow. 2 lives. One that was before fire, one that began after, Nandi explained. "The day you entered flames, you died to your old self and were reborn in our stories." Nida spoke then, his English careful but clear. "I am grateful for what you did, Mr. Holden. My people say I have a debt to you." Jack shook his head. "There's no debt, son. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Nandi said firmly. "Not anyone. That is why we have come. The boy must understand both worlds if he is to find his path. The council has decided he should learn the ways of the white man as well as the Apache. We ask that he stay with you when school begins in town." The request stunned Jack into momentary silence. Town was a good 15 miles away. Silver Creek had grown from a mining camp into a proper settlement with a schoolhouse, church, and even a small hotel. "You want him to go to the white school?" Jack asked carefully. "Times are changing," Nandi replied. "Our children must know both worlds to survive. The Indian agent has arranged it, but Nida needs a place to stay. The reservation is too far for daily travel." Jack studied the boy again. Having a child around would change everything about his carefully ordered life. Yet something in the boy's steady gaze stirred a long-dormant feeling in Jack, a sense of purpose beyond cattle and land. "It would mean staying here during the week," Jack said. "Riding back to the reservation on weekends, I suppose." Nida nodded. "I can work. I am good with horses." Miguel and Caleb exchanged looks but said nothing. Taking in an Apache boy, even part-time, would raise eyebrows among the ranching community. Some would call Jack a fool, others worse. "The agent says it will help relations between our peoples," Nandi added. "Show others that cooperation is possible." Jack removed his hat, ran a hand through his graying hair, and made a decision that would once again alter the course of his life. "He can stay in the spare room. We'll give it a try, at least until Christmas. If it works out, we'll continue." Relief flickered across Nandi's stoic features. "You honor us with your generosity. Kainaki's you. The boy's mother's spirit will rest easier knowing he walks with good guidance in both worlds." As they rode toward the ranch house together, Jack couldn't help but wonder if he was the one providing guidance, or if this boy, this living reminder of his single brave act a decade ago, had been sent to guide him instead. The first day of school in Silver Creek dawned clear and cool, a welcome respite from the summer heat. Jack and Nida rode side by side into town, the boy wearing new store-bought clothes that felt stiff and foreign against his skin. 3 weeks had passed since Nandi had brought him to the ranch, weeks filled with learning the rhythms of ranch life and growing accustomed to sleeping under a wooden roof instead of canvas. "Remember what we talked about?" Jack said as they approached the white clapboard schoolhouse. Children milled about the yard, their chatter falling into uneasy silence as they noticed the approaching pair. Keep your head up, pay attention to the teacher, and do not fight even if they say bad things. Nida finished, his face composed but his knuckles white where they gripped the reins. Jack nodded, pride mixing with concern. The boy had a quick mind and had already improved his English considerably, but Jack harbored no illusions about how he would be received. I'll pick you up at 4 o'clock sharp. As Jack helped Nida dismount, he noticed Sarah Kincaid, the schoolteacher, watching from the doorway. At 26, she was relatively new to Silver Creek, having arrived from Boston the previous year. Unlike many in town, she had expressed genuine enthusiasm about having an Apache student when Jack had spoken with her earlier in the week. "Mr. Holden," she greeted, approaching them with a warm smile. "And you must be Nida. We're very pleased to have you joining us." Nida gave a polite nod, his expression guarded but respectful. "Miss Kincaid," Jack acknowledged, handing her the small parcel he'd brought. "Some apples from our orchard. Thought they might be welcome." "How thoughtful," she replied, accepting them with a smile that lingered perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "I'll make sure Nida feels welcome today." As Jack rode away, the weight of uncertainty settled on his shoulders. He had grown surprisingly attached to the quiet, observant boy in just 3 weeks. The thought of him facing prejudice and isolation made Jack's jaw clench with protective anger. The hours passed slowly as Jack conducted business in town, purchasing supplies, arranging for a cattle sale, and stopping by the land office to pay his taxes. Throughout it all, his thoughts continually returned to the schoolhouse at the end of Main Street. At precisely 4 o'clock, Jack tied Rusty to the hitching post outside the school. The yard was empty, the other children already gone. Concern quickening his steps, Jack entered the building to find Nida sitting alone at a desk, a split lip and darkening bruise beneath his right eye marring his stoic face. Miss Kincaid stood nearby, her expression troubled. "What happened?" Jack demanded, crossing the room in 3 strides. "There was an incident during lunch," Miss Kincaid explained delicately. "Some of the older boys thought to test Nida's patience." "And," Jack prompted, already guessing the answer. "He didn't fight back," she said, a note of admiration in her voice. "Even when they pushed him down and called him terrible names, he simply stood up again, over and over." Jack turned to Nida, who met his gaze steadily. "I remember my promise," the boy said simply. Pride swelled in Jack's chest, mingled with a fierce protectiveness. "Did you catch the boys who did this?" he asked Miss Kincaid. "The Henderson brothers and Tom Wilson," she confirmed. "They'll be serving detention for 2 weeks, and I've sent notes to their parents." She hesitated. "Mr. Holden, perhaps it would be better if Nida—" "He'll be back tomorrow," Jack interrupted firmly. "And the day after that. He belongs here as much as any child in this town." On the ride home, they traveled in companionable silence until they crested the hill overlooking Crooked Creek Ranch. Jack finally spoke. "You did right today, holding to your word even when it was hard." Nida nodded, touching his split lip gingerly. "In my people's way, a warrior proves himself by enduring pain without complaint." "Is that what you think this is? A test of endurance?" Jack asked, troubled by the thought. "No," Nida replied after a moment's reflection. "It is the price of walking between worlds. Nandi says I must learn to be strong in both, or I will be weak in both." As they rode into the ranch yard, the setting sun gilding the adobe walls of the house, Jack realized that he too was learning to walk between worlds, the solitary existence he had known for so long, and this new life shared with a boy who carried the future of 2 peoples in his young hands. Winter came early to the Arizona territory that year, bringing bitter winds and occasional dustings of snow to the high desert. 3 months into Nida's schooling, a fragile routine had established itself. The initial hostility from the other students had gradually given way to a wary acceptance, due in no small part to Nida's quiet determination and Miss Kincaid's firm governance of her classroom. Every Friday afternoon, Jack would accompany Nida back to the reservation, where the boy would spend the weekend with his people, learning tribal customs and participating in ceremonies that kept him connected to his heritage. Every Sunday evening, they would return to the ranch, often bringing gifts of woven blankets or dried meat from Nandi. On a particularly cold December morning, Jack noticed Nida lingering by the corral instead of preparing for school. The boy stood motionless, watching the breath of the horses rise in steamy clouds against the pale sky. "Something troubling you?" Jack asked, approaching quietly. Nida didn't turn. "Tomorrow is the winter ceremony. Nandi says I am old enough to receive my adult name." Jack leaned against the fence beside him. "That's an honor, isn't it?" "Yes." Nida nodded slowly. "But I am afraid I have not earned it. The other boys my age have hunted with their fathers, learned to make arrowheads from their uncles, heard the old stories every night." He finally looked at Jack, his dark eyes troubled. "I know more about arithmetic and geography than I do about being Apache." The raw honesty in the boy's voice struck Jack deeply. He recognized the struggle of belonging, something he had felt himself as a young man orphaned early, never quite fitting among the families of settled ranchers. "Seems to me," Jack said carefully, "that walking two paths at once takes more courage than walking just one. Maybe that's worth honoring with a name." Nida considered this. "In town, they call me Nida Holden now. On the reservation, I am Nida, son of Talsi." "Who am I really, Jack?" Jack removed his gloves, showing Nida the burned scars that marked his right hand, permanent reminders of the fire a decade ago. "See these? For years I saw them as marks of a single moment. Now I understand there's something more, a reminder that life changes us, leaves its mark on us." He gestured toward the horses. "Take that pinto mare. She was born on Chiricahua land, captured by the army, sold to a trader, and finally came to us. Is she any less a horse for having lived different lives? Or is she perhaps more valuable because she knows different terrains?" A faint smile touched Nida's lips. "You are becoming wise like an elder, Jack." "Not wise," Jack chuckled. "Just old enough to have collected a few scars worth learning from." He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Whatever name they give you tomorrow, remember that names don't define you. They only recognize something that's already there." The weekend ceremony on the reservation proved to be a pivotal moment. Jack, invited as an honored guest, watched from a respectful distance as Nida participated in the rituals, moving with increasing confidence among his people. When the time came for the naming, Nandi called the boy forward to stand before the council fire. "You have walked between two worlds," the elder pronounced, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "You have endured the scorn of those who fear difference. You have carried the hopes of your people into places they cannot go. For this courage, we name you Biron Aldlushai, the one who transforms." When they returned to the ranch Sunday evening, Jack noticed a subtle change in Nida's bearing. He moved with new purpose, as if the ceremony had reconciled something within him. As they cared for the horses in the barn, Nida spoke without prompting. "I asked Nandi about you," he said, brushing down his pony with steady strokes, "about why the tribe accepted your help so easily that day." Jack paused in his work. "What did he say?" "He said the tribal scouts had watched you for many seasons before the fire. They saw how you treated the land, the animals, how you spoke with respect when trading with our people." Nida's brush continued its rhythmic motion. "He said some men wear their true nature on the outside for all to see, while others hide it deep. But fire burns away all disguises." The simple wisdom in these words settled over Jack like a warm blanket on a cold night. In saving Nida, he had revealed something fundamental about himself, something he had perhaps been hiding even from his own awareness. "Your new name suits you," Jack said softly. "You've transformed me too, you know." Spring brought renewal to the land and unexpected developments to Silver Creek. The railroad company announced plans to extend a spur line to the town, promising growth and prosperity. Ranchers and merchants alike celebrated the news, envisioning expanded markets for their goods. Even the reservation would benefit from improved transportation for their crafts and trading opportunities. As the school year drew to a close, Miss Kincaid, Sarah, as Jack had come to call her during their increasingly frequent conversations, approached him after dropping Nida off one evening. "Mr. Holden," she began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Jack, I've received an offer to teach at a new Indian school being established near Phoenix. They're seeking educators experienced with both cultures." Jack felt an unexpected pang at the thought of her leaving. Over the months, her visits to check on Nida's progress had extended into lengthy discussions about education, the territory's future, and eventually, more personal matters. "That sounds like an important position," he said carefully. "They'd be fortunate to have you." Sarah smiled, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I'm considering it, but I wanted to discuss something else first. The school needs someone knowledgeable about ranching to teach practical skills. Someone respected by both communities." Her eyes met his directly. "I recommended you, Jack." The proposal caught him completely off guard. "Me? I'm no teacher." "Aren't you?" she challenged gently. "I've seen how Nida has flourished under your guidance. The way you explain things, with patience and respect. The school director was quite interested when I described your unique position." Jack removed his hat, turning it in his hands as he considered her words. "I can't just leave the ranch. It's my life's work." "Perhaps it was," Sarah acknowledged. "But haven't you built it into something that could run without your daily presence? Miguel has practically managed it these past months while you've divided your attention." She was right, Jack realized. While his focus had shifted to Nida's education and welfare, the ranch had continued to thrive under his foreman's capable hands. The thought of selling it felt impossible, but the idea of new purpose stirred something deep within him. That evening, after Nida had gone to bed, Jack sat on the porch watching distant lightning flicker across the horizon. The approaching summer storm mirrored his own internal turbulence. Everything he had built, everything he had known as certain, suddenly seemed fluid, changeable. "Cannot sleep." Nida's voice came from the doorway. Jack gestured to the chair beside him. "Just thinking. What about you?" The boy, no young man, Jack corrected himself, settled into the chair with the natural grace that characterized all his movements. "I heard Miss Kincaid's offer. The other students talk about the new school. What do you think about it?" Jack asked, genuinely curious. Nida was silent for a long moment, watching the distant lightning. "I think, perhaps this is why you were given the name Man with Two Lives. Not just for entering the fire that day, but for what came after, for building bridges where others see only chasms." The wisdom in those words struck Jack profoundly. "When did you get so philosophical?" he asked with a gentle smile. "I learned from watching you." Nida replied simply. "You taught me that a man can change his path without losing himself." 2 weeks later, Jack stood with Nandi on a ridge overlooking the ranch. Papers had been signed, arrangements made. Miguel would manage Crooked Creek as part owner now, with Jack retaining a smaller share that would provide income while he explored this new chapter. "The circle completes itself," Nandi observed, his weathered face serene as he surveyed the land. "Fire took the boy's first family, gave him a second. Now that boy leads you to a new purpose." "I'm not abandoning what I built here," Jack said, feeling a need to explain himself. "Of course not," the Apache elder replied. "The hawk does not forget how to hunt when it soars higher. It simply sees more territory." He turned to face Jack fully. "Our people have a saying. Wisdom comes from living many lives in one lifetime. You have earned your name. Kainaki's you." As they rode back toward the ranch house where Sarah and Nida waited to begin the journey to Phoenix, Jack felt the weight of uncertainty lifting. Ahead lay challenges, certainly. Prejudices to overcome, systems to change, minds to open. But for the first time, he wouldn't face them alone. The man who had once defined himself by solitude and hard work now found himself surrounded by a family forged not by blood but by choice. A young Apache man with the wisdom of both worlds, a woman whose vision extended beyond conventional boundaries, and an entire community of children waiting to learn that differences could be bridges rather than barriers. The cowboy who saved an infant from fire had indeed been reborn, just as the Apache had named him, Man with Two Lives, embarking on his second.